Bum-ba-dum.
Bum-ba-dum.
Bum-ba-dum, bum-ba-dum, bum-bum-bum-bum-bum, bum-ba-dum, bum-bum-bum-bum-bum, Superman has faced his biggest foes, but in this movie, he isn't facing nuclear war, Lex Luthor, or even the integrity of journalism. No, he's facing a foe far greater. Budget cuts. Massive studio budget cuts halfway through production. I'm Ollie Davis. This is Luco and DAD. Welcome to Cutscene and Worst Movie Ever, Superman 4, Quest for Peace. Oh God,
That's pretty good.
That got a lot more drunk louty than I thought it would be in rehearsal.
Don't know why you didn't think it would get that way. It's you and I.
But when we were doing the rehearsals, it was quite bump. You know, we were trying to at least harmonise, but it got Kaiser Chiefs really fast.
Yeah, well, I thought it would go that way. I actually thought one of our first going at it was better.
Oh, I disagree hugely.
Yeah, the one I thought, we're going. Like, let's just go with this one. And then you were like, no, we're stopping now. I'm going to have some honey and a little gargle of water to make this better.
I wasn't on key. I don't think I was on key in the actual take either.
We were not.
I was closer to the key. What a score, though. John Williams' score.
Not done by John Williams here.
Well, he did a few alterations, apparently. But yes, it's based on his original score.
It is, yeah.
Which was good.
Have you ever played the John Williams game?
No.
Sing the Superman theme.
Oh, are you going to make me go to Jurassic Park? I have played this game. Dun 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 dun.
All right, now do Indiana Jones.
Dun dun dun. Dun dun dun. Dun.
And now do Star Wars.
Star Wars is easy. That's
Dun 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 dun. Now do Indiana Jones.
And Indiana Jones is, of course. Dun 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 dun.
Back to Superman.
Dun dun dun. Dun 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 dun. Anyway, Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park is I
went to a John Williams versus Hans Zimmer music night at the Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah.
And they did the conductor ripped off his... Oh, what? Who wins that squash match? You think Williams?
Yeah, I'd say Williams.
Zimmer's got good hits.
Wham.
Not him. That was just the trailer for Inception.
That's what anyone ever knows him for, though, is Wham.
And the conductor, when doing the Superman theme tune, ripped open his sort of, not top hat and tails, but, you know, whatever fancy conductors wear.
Cummerbund.
Yeah. And he had the Superman thing, and he had a full-on cape underneath it. And I'm like, you have been doing this for an hour and a half, and you had all this underneath.
Yeah.
He was obviously having the most fun.
That does sound
classical music doesn't often allow him. And he conducted with a light up sort of lightsaber thing.
So, but
for Star Wars.
It sounds like the other one, the Hans Zimmer conductor, had less fun because
it was the same conductor.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
There were like two competing conductors and two competing orchestras.
No.
Because that's what makes it sound like an actual battle. Then.
Yeah, it was titled versus, but in spirit, everyone won. It was kind of like a so and so versus Elvis, less conversation. It's a collab.
Yeah, my Junkie XL. My sister-in-law and her partner went to go see Cypress Hill and the London Philharmonic Orchestra at the Royal Albert Hall because they did it as a joke on The Simpsons, and then 30 years later they've now actually done it as a real life thing. And they said that the orchestra looked like they were having a great time.
Yeah. Joke from The Simpsons, or yet another example of predicting the future?
Yeah, predicted it. Simpsons predicted it.
Yeah.
So anyway, you had to do Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, as this month's edition of Worst Movie Ever.
Which kicks off our mini-series of Superman movies. It's the road to Supermania. Supermania. Because James Gunn's Superman... It's just called Superman?
Superman Legacy?
No, they wouldn't call it Legacy.
What am I thinking of?
Probably some never-released draft that you fawn over in your teenage years. Oh, but Kevin Smith did a rewrite. It was going to be called Superman
It is
Legacy.
just called Superman.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I watched the trailer for it last Thursday on a public transport, a tube, and I started crying.
Yeah. Cotton's got comics accurate hair.
At 20 to 10 in the morning. And I couldn't stop, and I just had to do this. And I probably looked like I just got some awful news on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does things to me, that trailer.
You love Superman. He's your guy?
No, I wouldn't say he's my guy.
No, I mean Green Lantern is your guy.
Like DC is my thing.
Yeah.
And Superman, I really respect. And when he's done right, so like All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison, there's like few better.
Mm-hmm.
Like probably the highs of Superman are as high as you can get, but the average quality of a Superman story or his character in general is pretty low.
So the common criticism against Superman is always boring because he can just do everything. So where's the jeopardy in Superman? As someone who has an affinity and, as in your own words, respects Superman, what is your take on that criticism?
Well, I think it's really fair. And if anyone who loves Superman gets too emotionally against that, they know it's because it's true. Because I went through like a 4 or 5 year period of reading the monthlies, and there's like back then there was like 5 different Superman comics: Superman, Batman, Superman, Action Comics, Superboy, Superman and Lois. And I read them all, and they are super sketchy. And even when you get a great writer on Superman, so Grant Morrison, for instance, did the New 52 relaunch of Superman. It's like. Really, really trying here to make him interesting. Because, he is superpowered. But the All-Star Superman, which is, in my opinion, the best story they've ever done, which if you've not read it before is about 10 to 12 issues, and it's modelled on the sort of labours of Hercules. I think that's what it's called. So it's these tasks, episodic tasks, that Superman has to complete in the end of his life. Right. Like his body's cells are finally breaking down. And it's wonderful. But it's got that kind of fin de siècle, end of a era vibe to it. So it feels really poignant. So really that it's, Superman's character, he's dying. Right at the start, he's going to die at the end of this. Or at least be transformed into some next level form of light.
It's kind of that the Kraven the Last Hunt. So with what is it about this new Superman trailer then? Because you're so hyped for this new Superman movie. Is it like it's a combination of James Gunn and DC?
You've already said it's Guy Gardner's comic book accurate haircut.
Is that what is it about this trailer? Because you said to me, you were like, you saw it before I did, and you could not wait for me to see it. And I saw it, and I was like, yeah, that looks good. That looks good. I did have a bit of a groan when the John Williams theme played. I was like, lads, it was
shreds.
I know, but it was 50 years ago. Like, why have we not had a new Superman theme in 50 years?
But it's like on the electric guitar.
But it feels to me like we are just relying on nostalgia. And bear in mind, this is just
what are you wearing right now?
I'm not looking to Bill and Ted though for my man, save me from this from media boredom. I actually felt that part of the problem of Bill and Ted, the third Bill and Ted movie that they did, there was a little bit of nostalgia reliance there, but it was a film unto itself.
I thought it was the woke problem.
But obviously that was going against it as well. But yeah, I think there's this over reliance on nostalgia to be like, hey, you remember this thing from your childhood? Well, here it is again. Whereas it would have been nice for it to just be like, here is a brand new, fresh, it's a clean slate. We're not just looking to the past, we're looking forwards.
I know what you mean, but I think the John Williams score is so iconic. Snyder didn't use it for Man of Steel and his verse. But for an equally great, though, I think Hans Zimmer's Man of Steel, I think it's just called Man of Steel, that song, is just awesome. And if you want another great Superman trailer, watch the third trailer for Man of Steel before that crushing disappointment of its release.
You're still waiting for that movie to be made.
I am. Like, where I am right now for James Gunn's Superman is the edging peak that I was before Man of Steel came out.
I had that with the first trailer for Zack Snyder's Watchmen. I'm actually still waiting for that movie to come out.
With the Smashing Pumpkins. Yeah. The end is the beginning is the end. Is that what it is?
It's the end is the beginning is the end, which is a B-side to the beginning is the end is the beginning. Yeah. It might be the other way around, but I'm pretty sure it is that way around, which was a song that was written for Batman and Robin.
Yeah. But with... I think what Gunn is obviously doing, but bear in mind this is the trailer, so they might not use that Williams score in the movie.
I was about to make that point, yeah, because trailers are not made by directors; they're made by companies.
And if it is, and I hope it is, I don't want to sound like I'm disowning the Williams score. Like, if it is, maybe it's only a small part as like a little reference. But Star Wars still used the Star Wars theme tune.
Yes, but it's a continuation of that same. If this was Superman 5 and it was the next chapter on from the Quest for Peace, then I would expect the John Williams score to be in there. The Star Wars movies are a continuation of one singular story, so they use the same theme song. That makes sense to me.
Multiverse. Solves everything. Oh, okay,
yeah.
Multiverse.
Yep, the Flash fixed all of those issues, so now we could just do whatever we want.
But what Gunn seems to be doing is putting in a lot of high concept comic book stuff, just like he did with Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's wacky. Is it Volume 2 where they have the scene with the Watchers? Is it the Watchers?
It's been a while since I've seen.
Like
with the Watchers, yeah.
So like he is into the wacky side of Superman, and there's so much wackiness in Superman, like the fifth dimension stuff with Mixtel Peaks.
Yeah, I can never say
its name. I feel like that is the route Gunn will go down. Quite space opera, sci-fi. And you can see it because like Guy Gardner, Hawk, I think Hawk Girl is in the trailer. Those are extraterrestrial superheroes. Like Hawk Girl's from Thanagar. She's not like a woman on Earth. Well, she kind of is. But she's gone to an alien territory. So the Green Lantern's there from Oa, all this stuff. So I think this Superman is going to involve a lot of cosmic craziness,
which I'm excited for.
And I think that's quite a big thing to introduce into Superman into the mainstream. Because if you ask my mum what is Superman, she'll go, "Oh, it's Superman, it's Lois Lane, it's Lex Luthor." Like it's a very terrestrial view of Superman.
Yeah,
you don't often get aliens, let alone whole peacekeeping alien systems. So I think the John Williams score, you do need a bit of familiarity to Trojan horse some of this more high concept sci-fi into the movie.
Yeah, which I like, and I'm actually quite in for. And I am excited for the movie because I like James Gunn, and I'm really excited to see what he does with this new era of the DC EU, or whatever they're going to rebrand it to. But what I'm actually really into is, going by that trailer and your description of it there, is that it's going to have a little bit of levity to it. It is not going to take itself too seriously. In the same way that Richard Donner always said about Superman, is that we are taking the subject matter seriously, but we're not taking ourselves seriously. And that is a way to not be, and I think what DC and WB have done is kind of go in the opposite direction, where we take the subject matter seriously and ourselves too seriously as well. Yeah. And looking at that trailer and your descriptor of it there, it feels like this Superman is going to be the first Superman, and actually the first WB DC property with any levity since Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Nice segue back into it, because I would have kept talking about James. Just one more bit on the James Gunn trailer.
Please do.
Because it sort of ties back to what you originally asked. Superman's too powerful, all this stuff. What is the very first shot of this trailer?
It's a spaceship. As in like a rocket ship.
Of the trailer?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about Quest for Peace.
No,
sorry.
not the Russian satellite.
Okay, well, I've only seen the trailer once.
Well, I watch it pretty much twice a week. So it is Superman crashing into an Arctic tundra, like pretty much dead, and blood is pouring from his mouth. It's like answering that question right up front. This ain't an invincible Superman.
Yeah.
This is a Superman who can be beaten. He needs the help of people around him. I always feel like Thor's a bit like that. Thor is a character, particularly in the early Marvel movies and some of the comics. There's only so much you can do with one-dimensional Thor, and he needs a really good supporting cast.
Yeah.
So you've got Loki, you've got Odin, you've got all the humans played by
Natalie Portman,
Stellan Skarsgård, Natalie Portman,
Kat Dennings.
Meow meow.
Kat Dennings recently posted that she walked around Disneyland or Disney World in the Marvel area, and lots of people were waving at her, and she completely forgot why.
I feel like I'm hoping that this Superman will have a better cast of characters around Superman, whereas what Zack Snyder seems to do was, no, Superman's all serious and he's a loner, and actually everyone around him is going to die. But like going back to the joy of Superman 4.
Sorry, that's my favourite bit from Man of Steel.
Oh no, we're going to have to do Man of Steel next.
See ya.
Oh God.
Peace, Clark, I'm off.
You had Kevin Costner right there. And it's such a good piece of casting.
Ta-ra.
Yeah. And also, what's Kevin Costner's big thing to Clark when he's a kid? Yeah. Rein it in a bit. Don't help all the kids.
Yeah. Don't be an idiot. Don't save people.
Did Zack Snyder ever read a Superman comic, or did he just read Dark Knight Returns and The Watchmen, and then not even all The Watchmen because he can't read the long text parts in between the issues?
I was going to say, if he read Watchmen, he did not get Watchmen.
I don't think he even reads the speech bubbles. So that's a cool shot. I'm going to make that into a movie.
I'm pretty sure Rorschach's the hero of this story. He's got the coolest mask.
And the problem was, it was there all along. He made zombies run. And we all thought that was cool. We all thought that was fine and acceptable because it was different and it was a noughties and he had a handheld camera and it gave it some kineticism.
Yeah, and he used Richard Cheese in the soundtrack. And we were like, this guy gets it.
And then it's 300 and we're like, now it's slow-mo. It's the other way. We're like, oh, wow, yeah, he knows how to make action films. No. He's such a superficial director who understands nothing about character nuance. And the only characters he can write are incredibly boring, self-serious. Boring.
And we get to watch those because you mentioned earlier this is the first step in our little Superman miniseries we're going to do now. We weren't going to do Quest for Peace, but I requested that we do Quest for Peace because
I
requested for peace because this is usually categorically declared the worst Superman movies.
Nope.
Like this and Superman 3, they're the worst Superman movies. And we were going to do Superman Returns, but we decided not to do that because that film is just bland. Like it is just fine.
I don't mind it.
Well, that's it. It's fine. It's not the worst movie ever made. It's not the best movie ever made. It was a movie that was made.
Kevin Spacey's a pretty good Luther. Can't say that
Can't
anymore,
say that anymore, can you?
No.
It sort of ruins X-Men 3. Because it took away Cyclops.
Bryan Singer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it took away it took away the director and it took away Cyclops. So they had to kill...
because Marsden is Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy Olsen. Sure, he made the right choice. Well, he wasn't in X-Men 3, so maybe he did. And so we're going to do this. We're going to skip Superman Returns and then jump ahead to Man of Steel. And then we're going to do Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. And then we're going to do Joss Whedon's Justice League. We are not doing the Zack Snyder 4-hour cut. We will talk about it in that episode, but we're not going to do a full scene-by-scene breakdown of the 4-hour Zack Snyder cut. But we are going to watch the DCEU Superman movies And then maybe if there's enough pressure for it, then maybe we'll do the Flash as well.
Which does have a bit of Superman in.
It's got Zod in it. Zod's the villain.
Yeah. Oh God, he is, isn't he?
Yeah.
I thought it was just a neater series to do the sort of Snyderverse run, because Superman 4, yeah, it's a Superman movie, but it feels like a weird add-on to this overall series that we're doing.
But
I'm so glad you pushed for it, because this at least has sincerity and earnestness to it and a sense of fun.
Yeah.
And even though all the money got pulled and it's mostly shot in a Milton Keynes
Car
industrial
park.
estate. Yeah. You want to do the UN? Nah. We'll use this business park.
Yeah.
We've got some pigeons.
Do you want to try and make this clearly London Underground station look like the New York subway system? Nah.
Now, there's a way we can film it. Well, you won't be paying attention to that this isn't New York. You'll be paying attention to how bad these shots are.
But we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yes.
But yeah, we are going to do the Snyder run of Superman movies, which you are really not looking forward to.
I am already crushed. Like, just you talking about it there, I can feel a weight on my chest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna really treasure Nuclear Man and John Cryer.
That's why we did this
Gene
movie.
Hackman.
We did this one. We wanted to add this on because I was talking to Adam Mason, one of our editors and one of our producers, and I said, "Oh, we're going to do a run of Superman movies." And I told him which ones. He goes, "Are you not going to do Superman 4?" And I was like, "Well, we did talk about it, but we kind of want to focus on these ones." And he was like, "Yeah, but it is the worst one." And I was like, "Because it is.
It is technically
like this and 3 are described as and categorically agreed upon as the worst Superman movie. So much so that when Bryan Singer came in to do Superman Returns, he made it very clear, I'm ignoring the continuity of 3 and 4. This is a direct sequel to Superman 2. Because those films are bad. That film is really, really good. And it's what Thingy was going to do. Neil Blomkamp was going to do with his Alien 5. I'm going to ignore the continuity of Alien 3 and 4. I'm just going to do as a direct sequel to James Cameron's Aliens and do it right.
Yeah.
And that is what, Singer wanted to do. I want to do Superman right by ignoring the events of 3 and 4. But you, quite, I would say controversially, don't like the Donner Superman movies?
I don't know if, again, I respect them, right? I obviously didn't watch them enough as a kid to get past how cheesy it is as an adult. My big Superman watch and how I really got into it was Superman and Lois on TV.
Yeah, Lois and Clark.
Yeah. I love that show. And that was my introduction to the Superman. I think Superman, to be honest, I probably watched Superman 3 and 4 on TV way more than Superman 1 and 2. And then in my sort of early university years, when I was really getting into Jeff Johns, because Jeff Johns, he's like the noughties and early 2010s architect of DC Comics. He started out, his first job in anything was Richard Donner's assistant. And he sort of blagged his way into that role. And he, always talks in interviews so glowingly about Superman and Superman 1 and 2. So I would watch those films and I'd really, with all my heart, try to love them. And, I love Christopher Reeve's performance. It's so sincere. In fact, all the performances are really good. Is it Margot Kidder?
Margot Kidder
as Lois.
Gene Hackman.
Gene Hackman as Lex is really great. But it's just not like Christopher Reeve is Superman. I think that is a great portrayal of Superman. I think Margot's pretty good as Lois as well. Gene is not Lex. He is not an up-to-date Lex. No. And that's it was released in the... It's a kiddie film.
It's a kid's film.
It's a kid's film.
Yeah, and what we're reviewing today is a kid's film.
Yeah. So and Superman 2 is to be honest quite hacked together.
It's a mess of a movie, which actually I still think works. Even as a mess of a movie, because it is cut up in the editing suite, it still works. The Donner cut is obviously is far superior.
Yeah, I've watched both. Again, it's like the Daredevil and the Daredevil director's cut.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so much better in the way that everyone talks about.
I think it is. I think all the stuff with General Zod is really great. Neil before Zod. I love all of that stuff. But maybe it is actually childhood nostalgia talking here, because I have a similar feeling about the motion picture. which I adore, with the exception of the very silly ending where he reverses the Earth on its axis, so time goes backwards. It's some silly Superman nonsense in there, but I do love that movie, and I do love Superman 2. But maybe it is just my childhood nostalgia.
I do not I don't want to take that away from anyone, because I've got loads of things I love from my childhood, and I will defend them even as an adult. I'm just saying, as with an adult's eye to watch those films, they do very little for me.
Which I think is fair. And I've got a similar feeling towards 3 and 4. Even as a kid, I didn't love 3 as much. I thought 3 was okay, it's fine. 4 was one that I never really got into. I don't know, it never really did anything for me. But the 1 and 2 very much did. And when I was at university, that was when the DVD release of the Donner Cut came out. So me and my friends kind of poured a lot of time into the first 2 movies, but not so much 3 and 4. Because the internet speak at the time was, those are the bad ones, don't bother with those. They would come together in a 4-pack, but you don't need to watch 3 and 4. You can buy, in the same way, it's like, hey, there's a Batman quadrilogy DVD release now that's got Batman Returns, and 2 tea coasters in it. So don't worry about those last 2 films, even though I would argue, I think Batman Forever is a really good film.
Oh, will we get to do Batman Forever and Batman and Robin?
I would love to do Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, because Batman and Robin in particular is a film I will die on the hill of. It's not as bad as people make it out to be.
With Superman, the Richard Donner movies, because he got replaced in Superman 2. That's right, isn't it? And that's why it's got 2 director credits. Even though they don't shine with me quality-wise, I really, respect what they did, because those are the first comic book movies that really became a mainstream success.
Even with the release of let's try that again. Even with the release of this one, it's still the only comic book movie. This predates Tim Burton's Batman. And
a couple of years,
And I think Howard the Duck might be the only other one, which I think is 80, might be the same year that this came out. So
it's 87, isn't it?
It's 87. So yeah, this is 87. I think Howard the Duck might be the same year, or might be the year after. I'll quickly double check that in a minute. So that means is within those 10 years, it is just Superman. There is no comic book movie genre. There are just 4 Superman movies.
So all the stuff we love today, and a lot of the comic book lore as well, is informed by those early Richard Donner movies.
86, so yeah. So it's 4 Superman
movies. Around
the
same time.
It's 4 movies and Howard the Duck. That is the comic book movie genre.
But all of those things, but people keep talking. Because I watched the Christopher Reeve documentary, Super/Man. He's a super man, that guy. I really recommend it. It won the best Oscar documentary this year. Not that that's a mark of quality. Oscar winner, who cares? But it sort of talks about how those first couple of movies, they were getting royal premieres. Even Superman 4 gets a royal premiere where the king and queen, queen and Prince Philip, attend.
Yeah, Charles and Diana were there for the premiere of this at the Leicester Square Theatre. Supergirl as well. So there's
Supergirl, yes.
Okay, so there's 5 Superman movies, technically, and Howard the Duck.
Was Supergirl... That was theatrically released?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So
we'll come on to it in a bit, in fact. It's actually one of the reasons why Superman 4 is the way that it is.
Everyone talks at the time, wow, they made me believe a man could fly. That's like the tagline to this movie. You got to see this movie because you will believe a man can fly. And we watch it with our 2025 eyes, or even like our 1998 eyes. I'm like, there's Guy on Wires. But...
yeah. Look cool, though.
At the time... that everyone's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I really believe in these special effects. I can suspend my disbelief at the cinema door, be transported into this world where superheroes genuinely do exist. And that's because of all the technical innovations that they did with the flying. They had like a team of 100 people just to figure out how they could get Superman to fly. And Christopher Reeve's performance, like he was I didn't know this before the documentary, he was a big fly guy. Like he flew a plane across the Atlantic.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. If
Because I haven't seen the documentary yet. I was going to try and watch it last night before we recorded this, but I couldn't find time.
Bit of a, not daredevil, but he was a very physically active guy. So obviously horse riding, which is where he had his unfortunate accident, skiing, ice skating, playing football, and flying planes. Not just flying planes, flying gliders, which is where you're taken up by an actual plane, you are released, and you just glide through the air without an engine. So he used that experience to really believe he was flying too, and he talks about that. Like I need for people to believe that I'm flying. I need to believe I'm flying. It's an actor. So Christopher Reeve, what a guy, and what a performance.
This is the clip that everyone always shares to show how great he is he has a moment when he is Clark Kent and he's a little bit hunched over, and then he takes off his glasses and all of a sudden his frame completely changes. Like, it's not an optical illusion. It's just him as a performance, just changing the way that his body is, and stands up and is like, oh, that is the difference between Clark Kent and Superman.
Yeah.
I don't think any other actor has really got.
No, I'm hopeful about this. The guy in the James Gunn one, just because there is a shot when Lois calls his name and he turns around and he has the most gawkish, like, whoa, face on.
Yeah.
But yeah, and no one does. Like, very few people, like Chevy Chase maybe, can do slapstick on screen as well as Christopher Reeve.
Absolutely, yeah. Because Brandon Routh is more or less just doing a Christopher Reeve impersonation in Superman Returns, much as like, I think it's the detriment to his own performance.
Yeah.
And then when you come to Henry Cavill, it's, now you're in Zack Snyder territory, where it's like
Superman's health.
Yeah, where it's like, that doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't actually matter the difference between Clark Kent and Superman, because no one really cares about that sort of thing.
But that is the most important. Like, what I always think of, I think the best bit of like pop culture criticism on Superman has come from Quentin Tarantino in Kill Bill Volume 2.
Yeah.
When it's David Carradine's monologue, and he talks about his favorite superhero being Superman, because everyone else, the superhero is their secret identity.
Batman is Bruce Wayne's secret identity.
But for Superman is the real person. Clark Kent, the ordinary guy, is the secret identity. And it was
also the same for Thor as well, but we don't bring out one up.
Oh yeah. But for the sort of, he's not got a secret identity.
He has, he's a doctor.
Oh what? But like, you talking about the rubbish version in the comics.
Well, yeah, but that is also what... Can't just... sorry, we're dismissing comic books now, are we, in this discussion about comics?
We're dismissing bad comic books. But yeah, especially like Superman it's meant to be an allegory for the immigrant experience and the idea of having to change your persona when you were really good on your home planet, but now you've got to sort of do this to fit in. Like, mate, I was a doctor back home, but now I'm driving Ubers in London, that sort of thing. And it's created by Jerry Segal and Joel Schuster. Both from immigrant families from Eastern Europe, I believe. What was my point? That Superman is good?
You were talking about David Carradine, and like, it's your favorite pop culture.
Oh, it was Christopher Reeve's performance.
Yes.
Because he gets to like the Clark Kent side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I really respect Superman and Superman 2 because they were the prologue to everything that came after for mainstream acceptance of superheroes and comic books.
And what I find very interesting as well is that we have these 4 Superman movies, and really we weren't supposed to get this 4th Superman movie. We very nearly didn't get this 4th Superman movie. And just 2 years after the release of this is when Burton's Batman comes out, and it completely changes the game. And no one really goes back to make movies like this, because this is now just seen as that's the campy way that comic book movies used to be. Like, that and Adam West's Batman. Like, that's the old guard. That's the way that we used to do it. Now it's the 80s because Frank Miller's come out with the Dark Knight Rises and all that. Not Dark Knight Rises, but Dark Knight Returns and stuff. So now we are dark and we are gritty. Batman 89 comes out, and now every superhero movie after that is just copying what Tim Burton did. That's the new template of things. And even when you read the scripts of Superman 5, the movie that was supposed to come out after this, they are copying what Burton was doing as opposed to really copying what this was, what they were doing in Superman 1 through 4. There are still elements of that, like the original draft of Superman 5, the first one they did the reading of last year, has got some levity to it, and Brainiac is basically just a movie quote machine, because that is how he's learnt about Earth, is through watching pop culture.
Nice.
So
like
there is
Bumblebee in Transformers.
Yeah, a little bit. But then when you read the third draft of the movie, which I think was written in 95, which then becomes sort of a precursor to when they scrap off Superman Reborn and it goes into the Nicolas Cage Superman Lives era, brilliantly documented by John Schnepp's The Death of Superman Lives. You should definitely go and check that documentary out. It's fantastic. That is a complete tonal shift from what they were doing in these 4 movies here. And it really is like between that first draft in 92 and this draft in 95, they were like, forget everything. Start again, introduce all of these characters. This is now a reboot, and you are going into this much darker tone. It's a fascinating like shift between. This is the last of an era.
Yeah. And it's quite poetic in a mirroring way, because Superman was the first comic.
Yeah,
he was 1939 Action Comics. That's right. And then all the Batmans, the Captain Americas, the Wonder Womans, they came after in the footsteps that he left. And now in the movie verse, it's the same. I know you had Batman 66, but we're really talking about theatrical mainstream blockbusters. And that is that. Just like how Superman worked for an innocent time, but then sort of became dated and limited, and other comic book characters took over. I guess he did a similar thing in film, where he makes sense. He's the OG. He starts the movie charge, but then everyone else ultimately far outstrips him on screen.
Yeah, you think about the time that this movie has come out. Cinema looks very different to what cinema looked like in the late 70s when the first movie came out. So how do we get here? So Superman 3 is released, and it is a good hit for the Salkinds. It actually did all right. There are some writers that say like it did like okay, it didn't do as well as they'd hoped.
The Salkinds are the right holders of Superman.
That's right, yeah. Time. And they said they were only going to do another Superman movie if Superman 3 did more than $40 million. And Superman 3 does $80 million globally.
But everyone hated it.
But everyone didn't like it. Well, everyone didn't like Richard Pryor doing, because it really is, it's less of a Superman movie and more of a Richard Pryor comedy that Superman is a part of. The only thing I really remember about Superman 3 is that the basic plot point of that movie becomes the plot point of Office Space when they are doing their like the crime that they commit. And they just go like, it's the plot of Superman 3. And they openly say, what we're doing is what they did in Superman 3. So they decided, okay, it did $59 million domestic. Let's do another one. Problem was, in the release between Superman 3 and getting to this point, Supergirl was released and tanked at the box office. A $30 million budget, made $14 million at the box office. And the other movie that the Salkinds produced was Santa Claus the Movie.
Yes. Which is, I love that film. Dudley Moore.
Dudley Moore, yeah. Which had a $50 million budget, but only made back 23 at the box office. So they've got 2 back-to-back duds. So now they don't really have any money to fund another Superman movie. So at the 1985 Cannes Film Festival, they met with your friend of mine, Cannon Films. Cannon are one of my favorite things of the 1980s and like film productions and stuff. Fascinating, wonderful company whose whole model was make lot and make cheap. And the way that they funded their movies was that they sold the rights, like the TV rights and the home media rights, before the film even went into production. So they would just go round to film festivals and film markets with posters and just be like, this is the movie. Have you got anything? No, but here is the movie. Here is a poster that we've made for it. That's how they sold Spider-Man when they had the rights to that, before they even realized who Spider-Man actually was. They sold the rights to Superman 4. They did the same thing with Master of the Universe, the He-Man movie. They were selling the rights to Superman 5 before they even got Superman 4 off the ground and stuff. So that was their model.
Sort of borrowing from the future to fund the today.
Exactly.
Not the best business practice.
It isn't. And also, this isn't a period of time where Canon are trying to expand their horizons, because previously what they have done are made low-budget movies. because their model works if your budgets are $5 million. Superman needs more than $5 million. This was a $30 million budget movie.
I just thought it'd be interesting to get my favorite interest calculator up.
Yep.
So 1987. By the way, the Superman 3 would have made the equivalent of £255 million or dollars, sorry, in today's money.
Hey,
that's a really respectable performance.
Studio would have been pretty happy with that. That probably would have been enough to get yourself another one.
So 30 million, you said?
30 million is what they were looking to spend on this movie, yes.
That would be a $85 million movie.
Yeah.
Now,
so they bought the rights from the Salkinds to make this movie. They bought it off him for $5 million, and they announced, we're going to make Superman 4. It's going to be released Christmas 1987 with a $30 million budget. Hilariously, they thought that Christopher Reeves was already signed on for the movie because he was part of the deal. So they announced, and Christopher Reeves is returning. He was not, because his option to play Superman expired with the release of Superman 3.
That is a really awkward negotiation tactic to put yourself in.
Yes.
Because you've already committed to the guy. I don't know if you've got this in there, but from the documentary, Reeve was quite disillusioned with Superman 3.
Yeah, I've got a quote from that.
Yeah, and wasn't going to return.
No.
And he wanted to move more into serious movies,
Yeah.
which tragically never really worked out for him.
No.
He's like a Juilliard-trained serious actor.
He's a theatre guy. He wanted to move into directing, and he directed second unit stuff on Superman 2 and Superman 3, I think. Certainly Superman 3. And he was even eyed to maybe direct this one, because that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to move into directing, but he directed a lot of theatre.
At this time, his marriage also was sort of fizzling out. His first marriage, yeah.
So what actually brings him on is they say, okay, you can sign off on the script, you can sign off on the director, and we will finance your serious movie, Street Smart. So he signs on for a 2-picture deal with Canon, and he approaches them as like, what's your pitch? And he's like, I want to do it about the nuclear arms race.
Yeah, it's always difficult when you give actors creative influence behind. Not all actors, but some, particularly in Hollywood, might have a bit more. I don't know. I don't want to patronize, but sort of idealistic political views.
Yeah, I want to use this character to talk about this message that I'm really interested in, even if that's not really what the character is about.
And Reeve was very sort of politically active in a quite lovely Superman way. He would pay for Glenn Close and all his friends, Susan Sarandon, to get on a jet to go to Washington to join protests.
Amazing.
For things like the environment and let's get rid of the nuclear weapons. Anything you would get into in your second year of university and quickly grow out of by the time you had to vote.
But not Christopher Reeve. He's like, I'm going to make that Superman.
Yeah, but that's like, I think that's
quite lovely.
The Venn diagram of Superman and Christopher Reeve has quite a big crossover.
Yeah.
You need those idealistic people.
Do you know who he did want to direct the movie? Ron Howard.
That would have been, that would have been a perfect fit.
A lovely, safe pair of hands. And actually,
and someone with that same vision of old school America.
Yeah. Instead, Cannon actually wanted Wes Craven to direct the movie, but Christopher Reeves did not like him.
And we got neither of them.
Instead, we got
Sidney Sylvie, the direct. I mean, the only thing he's done of real historical note is the Ipcris Files.
Yeah, I think going to say Superman 4.
yeah. With but that's more of a Michael Caine vehicle in the 60s. It's a decent movie, but like it's not Get Carter.
Yeah,
which was when Michael Caine could do no wrong in the 60s. You got Ipcris Files, which was a British spy thriller. Get Carter as a crime one. You've got the Italian Job. But it's never the directors that are truly hailed as the visionaries there. It's Caine as a star on screen.
So you mentioned Reeve's sort of like political leanings. I got an interview that he did with the LA Times in January of 1987. So this is on the set of Superman 4. He said, I'm personally very left. I believe a nuclear arms treaty is possible. I'm alarmed at our president's behavior at Reykjavik. When Cannon approached me about playing Superman again, I thought it would be a good idea to get the character involved in trying to solve real problems. Yes, Sidney Fury was the director's name.
Fury. Sounds like that's a comic book character.
Yeah. He said, but Reeve, this is LA Times, but Reeve says the message of Superman 4 won't be too preachy. Quote, Quote, the movie is first and foremost an entertainment. I'm most interested in the heartbeat of Superman and not how many heads we can knock together. I keep coming up with ideas about Superman's emotional life and everyone would say, yeah, but then there's a fight on the moon. I think the two approaches can exist.
How do we get to the fight on the moon? I don't care what the story is. We need to finish with a fight on the moon.
And then he goes on to say, the humor, warmth, and romance of the Superman movies have made them different. Without parodying the characters as Superman 3 did, this one will be the funniest. I didn't subscribe to the style of Superman 3.
You know what? It's got probably the most traditional sitcom farce setup in one of the scenes.
Yeah, the four-way dinner scene, the double dates.
Where he has to be both Superman and Clark Kent in the same room.
Yeah.
Which is your classic sort of sitcom character. He's agreed to 2 dates. Yeah. For some reason, they're in restaurants right next door to each other, and he goes between the two. Now he's got a hat on, now he hasn't. It's actually a pretty tight scene, I thought.
On Canon, he said, they're like the guy who flies tourists but wants first-class service. I admire their reckless...
This was done while the movie was in production.
He's on set of a Canon film and said, they're like the guy who flies tourist and wants first-class service. I admire their recklessness in buying into Superman, though they do like to nickel and dime you on paper clips. For the most part, we're getting what we want.
This was in a separate interview with John Cryer, I think, who plays Lenny and who grew up to be, John Cryer, who's in 2.5 Men and stuff. And he said on the first day, Reeve came over and said, this is going to be crap.
He said, this is going to be a disaster.
But we've just done the Spumverse, right? And we've done Daredevil as well. Big studio movies. And I don't like the stale corporate direction there.
Me too.
There's something quite underdoggy about Canon. I feel like, they're trying to pinch every penny, but I think in their hearts, they want to make good films.
Yeah.
And that's why it's quite nice.
And they want to make big, grand things.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories about Canon is Mohammed Globum. I always get his name wrong, but one of them was on the set of Master of the Universe. And Master of the Universe had Castle Grayskull was the most expensive set made for any movie. And they had this huge, big, monstrous Castle Grayskull set. And they did not have enough movie to film a final fight scene.
Oh, my God.
And the director said, we could sell the set. And then we would have enough money to film a fight scene. And he was like, I would rather sell my own shoes. Because he didn't want... It's like, but look what we've accomplished. Look what we've built.
I'm going to live here after this.
We can't sell this. Look at it. Because they didn't And so in the end, they had to go to Mattel to get more money from them to fund it. Because they basically was like, we don't have a finale for the movie. Can we have more money, please? Speaking of them needing more money, we'll come on to that in a little bit.
They're dreamers.
Yeah, they are.
I'll always chime more with a dreamer than a penny pincher.
And they are they were guys who were making these very low budget movies, knew what their target audience was, knew that it wasn't really the box office, it was the home movie market. That's what they were making things for.
Which was huge.
And they were doing so well out of it. But the idea was, but we can go bigger. We can make a Superman movie. We can make a He-Man movie. We can make whoever the Spider-Man guy is, we can make one of him as well. They managed to get Margot Kidder and Gene Hackman returning. Fun fact.
How?
Money, I guess.
Hackman is one of the most difficult people to work with, apparently.
Probably Reeve. So I was like, want to make a movie about the nuclear arms race.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, that's fun. Well, fun fact, this is only the second time that Gene Hackman's played Lex Luthor. Because all the stuff he filmed in Superman 2 was filmed for Superman 1.
Whoa, and he's not in 3.
So he actually only
Weird.
He was only on set for 2 Superman movies, but is in 3/4 of them.
Yeah. That's economical.
So production began in London in 1986 with a budget of 32 million, which was quickly cut to 17 because Canon hit financial troubles.
I think the description of London's quite generous.
Because it's in Milton Keynes.
It's in Milton Keynes or quite...
Well,
it's in the greater London area.
They were in Eel Street. So, they were in those studios there. So, because Canon bought those studios. So they were in London. But yeah, exterior stuff was filmed in Milton Keynes. So Canon's, their basic model, as we were talking about earlier, was to sell the rights to things. And that worked on $5 million budget movies. It does not work on a $30 million budget movie. So they actually just did not have enough to make a Superman movie. Reduce the budget down by basically to half of it. And to stay afloat and keep production going, Canon signed a deal with Warner Brothers to distribute this and their upcoming Sylvester Stallone movie, Over the Top, the brilliant arm wrestling movie that stars Terry Funk as well. They sold so that they could distribute those, and that would get them $75 million. Brilliant, right? Now they've got $75 million. But herein lies the Canon rub. They've got 30 productions on the go. So we can't just put all of this into Superman 4. Why put all of our eggs into one basket when we've got 30 baskets? Now we can spread this money across more productions. So Superman 4 doesn't really get much more money, but it does mean that it can finish. I've got this from the AFI catalog. They write, the July 29th, 1985 Daily Variety reported that Cannon secured a 65 million line of credit from the First Bank of Boston once the Warner deal gave the studio new credibility. However, the funds were filtered among all Cannon productions, not just those with the greatest potential for box office success. By late 1986, so bearing in mind, this is, we nearly had the money here, and now 1 year later, Cannon not only had not had a substantial hit in several years. With loan payments due, the studio were on the verge of bankruptcy. Warner Brothers came to the rescue with a $75 million cash infusion in exchange for distribution for Cannon's upcoming films and part of their library. And to keep costs down, they replaced the crew from the first 3 movies and replaced them with much cheaper and inexperienced Israeli crew members. And we're not going to use the same special effects they did for the flight that they used for 1 and 3, which was the I'm going to get this right, the frontal projection system. That was expensive. More, not only that, but as the visual effects supervisor put it in some interviews, using that system means you can get 3 shots done a day. But if we use the much cheaper blue screen, we can get 8 to 10 shots done a day. And the director was very, very sure that the London visual studio that they booked would do the effects very efficiently and very effectively.
Spoiler for the movie review part of this show. It's probably the cheapest looking part of the whole film.
Yeah, I think that is Superman 4's biggest mark against it is does look cheap compared to the other 3 movies.
It's the flying moments. Because on the moon, it's just 2 guys fighting in slow motion.
Yeah.
It's not particularly enthralling, but it doesn't look cheap.
Yeah.
But the blue screening, green screening, whatever you want to call it, of people not to scale flying around New York metropolis doesn't quite make you believe a man can fly.
Not particularly.
Which was the whole main point of the first movie when it got its mainstream success.
But hey, we've got the movie finished. John Cryer's claimed that the movie is unfinished, which I don't think is technically true. I think that they have got a finished movie, so much so that they're so happy with it, they're moving it from Christmas 87 to summer of 1987.
It's a blockbuster.
It's a blockbuster. This will appeal to families of all ages. People are going to love this movie. Test audiences disagreed. And the big thing that they had to do was cut 30 minutes off of this 2-hour movie to make it to a nice tight 90. And that meant that they had to cut out quite a chunk of the film, which was, there's supposed to be 2 nuclear men in the movie. There's Lex's first experiment, which goes wrong, which is actually a huge comedy sequence.
Well, it sounds like more, it's Bizarro.
Yes.
Sort of more like what Bizarro would be.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a moment. So there's this whole sequence with this other nuclear man that gets cut from the movie, and I think maybe quite unfortunately, more stuff between Clark and Lacy. Kind of gets cut from the movie. My guess is, and I can't find this confirmed anywhere, but my assumption is test audiences were like, well, no, we like Clark and Lois or Lois and Superman. Like, Lois should be the main love interest, not this new girl that you brought in.
Yeah, it's a weird choice to have famously Clark and Lois be the 2 people. Like that's always been the big crux of the mainstream appeal, I think, of Superman.
Yeah.
Particularly the 90s TV show. Like, as soon as they got together, the ratings plummeted.
Yeah.
It's the sexual chemistry and the will they, won't they drama between them and the love triangle. But yeah, Lacy Warfield is the character.
Subtle name.
Yeah, it's Dad owns the new company that's taken over the Daily Planet.
And do you know what he loves? War.
Warfield.
Maybe we're called War Lover.
Yeah. No, those are the arms guys.
Oh, sorry. Jim Broadbent.
Yeah, it's weird to see him.
I know. I was just like, is that Jim Broadbent?
But yeah, Lacy. Yeah, I don't blame them for that, and she doesn't really add anything to the film.
No, so a lot of her scenes with Clark are kind of cut out. We basically get like the broad strokes of it, and what we end up with in the movie is scenes kind of moved around and moved out of order, which at one point creates a weird continuity cock up. Because there's a bit when Nuclear Man just like he falls in love with Lacy.
Yes.
And he's like, he goes to get her. And he arrives down and Clark's like, you'll never get the girl. And I was like, how do you know what he's here for? And that's because that scene's supposed to come after a whole scene with Superman, Lacy, and Nuclear Man when Nuclear Man has gone after Lacy.
Because from what I read, the original Nuclear Man, first Nuclear Man, in his more bizarro, simplistic mind, caveman, I love Lacy. Like, he sees a picture of Lacy, and he's like, I love Lacy. And then you've got, well, Lacy loves Clark.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But why can't he just fall in love with Lois? That's far simpler.
Because they wanted to introduce this new character, I guess. But I say they wanted to introduce this new character. They write her off in the movie. Like, even in the original ending of the movie, she leaves because David Warfield, spoilers for the end of the film, loses the Daily Planet, and then Perry White buys it back. And then Lacy doesn't actually get a send-off, but in the original ending, in the deleted scene, she has a scene in a car with Clark, and they kiss, and they have their goodbye.
Oh, do they?
And they have their goodbye moment, and Lacy drives off to try and find what her next adventure is. So they weren't introducing a new character for fans to fall in love with, because she leaves.
It's weirdly episodic, isn't it?
As
opposed to a longer running plan for Superman, but I guess that makes sense for what it was at the time. It makes me think, even with all the money, I don't think Superman 4 would have been great. I think it would have been of the same quality as Superman 3.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the original Nuclear Man now? Or,
sure.
Do you want to save that for when we get into the
I don't know much more about him, other than what I've said.
So we have got the deleted scenes, because they did film all the stuff with the original Nuclear Man, which, as you say, like, is sort of described online as sort of like a Bizarro style character. And I think that has meant a lot of write-ups about Superman 4 to be like, it was supposed to have Bizarro in it. That's not quite the case. As a comic book reader, do you want to explain to anyone who might not know who Bizarro is?
Bizarro is from Bizarro Land, opposite the Bizarro world. It's like a sort of inverse of everything. He's really dumb. He speaks in opposites. He's just like, he's a low IQ version of Superman. Looks like a Frankenstein version of Superman.
So in the original version of the movie, Luthor has a first experiment. Luthor and Lenny have a first experiment where they're going to create this guy that's going to destroy Superman, and this is what they create.
Yeah, because it's a different actor to the original. Oh,
cool. I just gotta,
try Whoop.
Just got to get rid of this advert first.
Oh. Wow, that is way more comedic. Is he tiny, or is he just down some stairs?
He's down some stairs.
He called you father. What a moron. Hey, is he gonna wear some clothes? I mean, you gonna let him out like that? You make him self-conscious. Get my rope.
Yeah, so very much a caveman Frankenstein level person.
I need this for dignity. My reputation's at stake. Just put it on.
So yes, I don't think that's Bizarro.
Someone probably knew of Bizarro, and they were like, I could do that better. Look, to be honest, I've got no love lost for Bizarro. I don't. I'm not like, oh, when's the next great Bizarro? arc coming in the comics.
It's just a fun bit, I guess.
It's just one of those weird Superman things that have stuck around in the lore.
Yeah, so all of this stuff gets cut. He has a scene where he goes to the dance, like they have a dance, they go to a disco, Lacy and Clark, which was set up when she's talking about, we're going to do Metropolis after hours. And that is when he falls in love with her. And the genetic memory of this version of Nuclear Man is then in the next version of Nuclear Man, and that's how he remembers Lacy.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I'd miss this Nuclear Man.
It is just full on comedy. Like, this is where I think, Reeve was saying it's a much funnier movie than Superman 3 was, but without parodying the characters.
Just Bizarro. He's kind of a parody himself.
Yeah.
When I watched it because I've never seen Superman 4, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched it for the first time and I was like, wow, that had a choppy middle. Like, everything's boom, 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 next scene. But I wasn't there going like, oh, it's weird. Like, this Nuclear Man's weird. It feels like he's missing some previous iteration of him.
No, it just creates a slight continuity towards the end where you're like, how do these characters know this? And then you find these elite scenes or you read the script and you're like, oh, I can see how we've now ended up in the position that we are. There was a lawsuit over the screenplay for this. I got this from let's get the AFI catalog. They write, although Mark Rosenthal and Lawrence Connor are credited for writing the screenplay after collaborating with Christopher Reeve on the story, the writing credits were subject to a lawsuit. The 26th of April 1987, LA Times reported that Barry E. Taft and Kenneth P. Stoller filed a $45 million lawsuit against Reeve, Cannon Films, and Warner Brothers, claiming that Reeve stole their idea. The pair had submitted a story once titled Superman: The Confrontation, registered with the Writers Guild of America, to Reeve, Reeve's agents, and Warner Brothers in 1985. Their narrative involved the hero hurling the world's nuclear weapons into the sun, addressing the United Nations, and showed the deathly ill Superman being cured by an energy device from Krypton that could only be used once.
Those are actually very unique points that are definitely in the final movie.
The lawsuit contended the pair had an implied contract with Reeve after a telephone call from the actor to Barry E. Taft promising to take the story idea to the studio. In 1990, the LA Times reported Reeve's deposition. He said that he received the outline but never read it and phoned Taft to get him to stop pestering his secretary. During that telephone call, Reeve briefly glanced over the script and offered a few encouraging words. A judge ruled Reeve did not steal Taft and Stoller's idea. The May 7, 1987 LA Times reported, which the writers appealed. That case was set to go to trial in May 1990, but instead went into arbitration. The pair were ruled to have no claim on the writing of Superman 4, and a judge dismissed the lawsuit. Which is wild as well, because it was registered with the Writers Guild.
Yeah.
And those 3 points are all in this final version of the film.
Yeah.
But the film came out. Not a hit. It came out open to 5.6 million with a domestic total of 15.
Let me work out what that is in my wonderful calculator. 15, you say?
15 domestic and 30 million worldwide.
15 is 42 million.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not, these days.
Well, yeah, I mean, considering they reduced the budget down, it's still, even with its really reduced budget, did not make back what they'd spent on it, unfortunately. However, Elias Salkind, who was the son, announced that they were going to do Superman 5, released for Christmas 1991, but noted that Christopher Reeve was likely not going to come back. But also, the film is not conditioned on him coming back, saying that new actors will play Tarzan, new actors will play James Bond all the time. Chris Reeves actually said that on the set of Superman 4. It's like, I'm probably not going to play this role again because we've had 4 James Bonds. Why should I be the only Superman? Particularly as well because Superman is eternally 30 and I'm getting too old for the role. I'm now 34. Making the point, like, by the time we make a new movie, I'll be 36, 37. He's wearing a wig in this movie.
Is he really?
Yeah, Chris Reeve's wearing a wig in this movie because his hair's already receding. So he's like, I'm not going to be a young man by the time they make the next one. This will likely be my last Superman movie. It was originally titled Superman the New Movie and later titled Superman Reborn with Brainiac as the villain.
Brainiac's kind of in Superman 3 though, right?
Yeah, sort of, but not like Brainiac.
Yeah.
Like, this is Brainiac.
What,
Brainiac.
big green Megamind Brainiac?
Exactly, yeah. In a spaceship, metal mind, and all this sort of stuff. It features the death of Superman. And
In 91?
In 91. Yeah, it predates the death of Superman. But they had Superman dying, the full coffin procedure for him as well, with like the S on the coffin and everything. But the story is that Brainiac is shrinking worlds and putting them in glass jars.
That's what he loves to do.
And then trying to find new homes for them. So he shrinks down Metropolis, trying to find a new home for him. And he does the same he has another one with Krypton. So Superman gets to go back to Krypton and become reborn. And in the end, they were just like, look, we're not going to go ahead with this. That sort of stalls. Then they get new writers on it. And the last draft of it, which I think is like 95, really does feel like this is now just the precursor for us doing Superman Lives. And they scrap it off, start again, and do Superman Lives with Nicolas Cage and Tim Burton.
Oh, yeah, Tim Burton. Kevin Smith had no part?
Kevin Smith was hired to do one of the, I think that's when
drafts.
Smith comes on and he does one of the drafts. So I think he does like a treatment as opposed to like a full draft of Superman Lives. He does one of the treatments of it, which he talks about in An Evening with Kevin Smith. They're quite famous. He wants them to fight a mechanical spider at the end of the movie.
That's the producer, isn't it? Who's obsessed with mechanical spiders.
Yeah, he was, I'm going to get her name wrong now. He was someone's hairdresser.
Yeah.
I can't remember
Silver? Something silver?
No, I can't remember whose hairdresser he was, but he basically that's how he got his start in Hollywood. And Kevin Smith says that he would lay on his sofa and do this, and have like a little screen in front of him in his mind as you're reading him the treatments.
Yeah,
and it would go like, go.
The punchline to this is that Kevin Smith went to the cinema the next year to watch Wild West, which was produced by this same person. And hot damn, at the end of that movie, if it isn't a giant mechanical spider attacking Will Smith, piloted by Kevin Kline.
Yeah. And that's what he wanted. He wanted his King Kong moments where you open up the King Kong gates.
Not Kevin Kline. Kevin Kline was Will Smith's partner.
No, it's Gary Oldman.
Is it Gary Oldman?
Is it Gary Oldman?
Movie?
Why do I feel like it's Gary Oldman? Yeah.
It's Kevin Kline, yeah.
No, but Kevin is the partner.
Who's the bad guy? You know, the sort of Colonel Sanders with robot spider legs. No way Gary Oldman did the
Kenneth
Fifth
Branagh.
Element. Kenneth Branagh, it's the other one.
It's the other British guy. So that's... And what I find hilarious about that is, should we ever get to do it, that's in The Flash.
Yes. Yeah, it is, yeah.
Which I find infinitely fascinating, because that is not even being nostalgia for a movie like the other flashback sequences are. That is being nostalgic for a director telling a story to university students on a DVD released in the mid-2000s.
Yeah. In wrestling, that's when a shoot goes too far. It's an inside baseball.
But I highly recommend, if anyone hasn't seen it, go check out The Death of Superman Lives. It is a brilliant, brilliant documentary.
We were fortunate to meet the big guy, the director, before his sad passing.
Yeah. And then in the mid-1990s, Warner Brothers purchased back the Superman rights, and that's where we head off towards Superman Lives.
Isn't that crazy that just this random production pair had the rights to Superman, and Warner Bros. Were like, I guess I'll sweep those up. Today, people will be making movies to stop those rights reverting to some other holders.
Well, they were probably trying to get it so they can keep hold of those rights, but this isn't a period of time where studios weren't just hoovering up properties. Now the aim of the game, which I think Bob Iger is the guy that's really changed the way that this is like, the aim of the game now is just to own as much IP as you possibly can. So rather than just license the X-Men, why don't we just own all of Marvel and we have all of their characters? Why license Star Wars when we could just own Lucasfilm, which also gives us Indiana Jones and also gives us all these other things that they do?
Well, movies nowadays are marketing for theme parks. It's just how you're going to look at it.
Well, absolutely, it is. There's a really brilliant comparison piece between, they're doing the live-action Lilo and Stitch. Have you ever seen the original poster for Lilo and Stitch? It's Stitch, and he's sort of eating away at the logo, and he's surrounded by all of the Disney characters, like Disney animated characters. And there's the genie, there's Timon and Pumbaa, and the tagline is "Every family has one." it's like so it's just like
yeah.
it's like oh man, look at all these characters we've got. Well, and Stitch is part of our family. The new poster they've done is the same, but there's like the Captain America shield, there's a lightsaber, there's the Pixar lamp, and it really is
Deadpool for kids.
And it is just now it's Disney like previously we made movies. Now look at all we are.
Look at all our shit. It's the James Franco speech in Spring Breakers. That's it.
Yeah. That's it. So yeah, that is the production history of Superman 4.
Can't say that anymore, though, can you?
So at this point, we would like to thank everyone for joining us, because we're going to be doing a scene-by-scene breakdown of Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, in full, in all of its detail. We're going to be watching the movie, and that is over at patreon.com/cutscene if you would like to join us over there for that.
Yeah, which means we will get to go through some of these flight sequences, and I think one of the funniest moments we've done in our worst movie ever series.
And I know which one you're thinking of. I've got my own one.
Oh, well, actually, before we do wrap up this part, should we bring in the board?
Please do. Yeah, let's try and work out where. Do you want to do our ranking now?
Well, I'll just do a recap of the ranking, and then we'll decide where Superman 4: Quest for Peace. We'll get a better board eventually.
Yeah,
one that you can see better. So, actually, do you want to put it on my shot?
Yep.
We could have got a smaller board. Is that Luke? You might have to speak.
That's fine. I can do that. Yeah. So currently in first place, we have got. I'll do it from reverse. Actually, of the movies that we've done, Madam Web is at the bottom, followed by Kraven the Hunter, followed by Daredevil, followed by Spider-Man 3, followed by what we do think is the worst movie that we've reviewed so far, Morbius. I think that list is actually quite fair.
Well, yeah, we like Madam Web so much because it's fun.
Yeah.
And everyone doesn't care in the film, which really does go against how I rank these.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to rank Superman 4 quite low down, worst movie ever.
Me too.
Because everyone seems to be putting an effort.
Yeah, even though they know, like, I don't think this film's going to be very good. Like Christopher Reeves, he's openly saying, this film's going to be dreadful. But he is trying.
He shows up for work. He actually tells a story. There's an interview in the documentary when he talks about being so excited to work with Marlon Brando on the first Superman movie. Mm-hmm. And he gets there and he knocks on Marlon Brando's door and he's like, do you want to read lines with me? Or we can prep some stuff. And Brando goes, no. And Reeve was just like, oh, you don't care. And he actually buried Brando in subsequent interviews, saying, if you're here to just show up and collect a paycheck, I don't care how bad the movie is. You're a professional. You give it your all.
You heard the story about Brando on the set of the Island of Dr. Monroe, where because Brando quite famously didn't learn lines, he would just wear an earpiece and the lines were fed to him.
It's method. It's what they do in the method school with Stanislavski.
So you have this little earpiece on, and you got someone offset, off screen, just reading him the lines that he's got to say next, and he would just recite them as he hears them. Because they were by an airfield, he would often just get interference from the airport,
like air traffic control, and clear for landing.
Exactly, and would just say what he was hearing from the airport.
I bet it's captivating, though.
It probably is, and he didn't even realize he was doing it. At no point started to be like, "Oh, this doesn't sound right," because he doesn't care. He's like, "What a weird script."
Well, join us over at patreon.com/cutscene to see where Superman 4: Quest for Peace lands in this list. Jam, not jam. I did hold it over my head. and I recreated the shot.
And you went bum 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 bum. No, wait, no. Da 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 da.